Heru Behudet. Om Pata 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 Pata. Puja greetings. So this evening we'll take a look at the Hypostyle Halls. But before we do that, I wanted to show you. Remember the last time I shared that I have a cleaner picture of the pylons, the facing pylons, without any people standing in front of them, the area. So here it is. And you can see on the close-up, you can see the symbol of Heru Behudet above the doorway of the temple. And this is before you go into the open court, with the peristyle court is through this opening. Well, look at the size of the opening. And then look at the size of the pylon, they're huge. And you see here Heru and Aset and the Pura. We discussed this when we're here. There's a club. And the vulture goddess is with him as he performs the action of subduing the enemies. And you have the same scene on the other side. It should be understood that these scenes are metaphorical scenes, and they relate to overcoming negative afflictive emotional states and conditions. Egoism. And when you actually come to the temple, and you look up, this is somewhat where you have to look up as you get closer so that you can see the symbol of Heru Behudet clearly as you walk in. Here you have the Pura giving offerings to Heru and the Set. And in ancient times, these were not tourist destinations. These were destinations of the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment and wisdom. So people didn't come here just to look around. People came here to discover the spiritual science and the spiritual wisdom of the ancients, of the mystery of the temple. And here again, you have these notches. This is where the flagpoles would be, that hold the flag above the temple. And last time we were here, we discussed we spoke a little bit about Heru and his process and what he was doing in relation to the crowd, and Aset and what she was doing in relation to her. So you can get a nice, clear view. I pulled this picture up. And if you turn around, this is where you come from. So I had to, these people are the participants that came on our trip when we took the trip. We visited the temple. That's me over there taking the photograph 360. And that's a Sarma taking a still photo. And these are the spiritual students that came on the trip with us. And essentially, we're all spiritual students when we go on the trip. We are all Shemsu, we are all practitioners of the mysteries. And so what you come here for is the pathway to enlightenment. You don't come here to hang out and to, oh, wow, look at this, and then you leave. And then that's it. So in modern times, this day and age, you can go as a tourist and you can walk all over the temple, any area of the temple that's allowed. And you can take your pictures and you can walk in and walk out and never look back again. You can have it as a trip that you went to that was nice. But that doesn't get you too far. And that doesn't help you in a substantial way. If you go on a trip and you go on an initiatory trip, a spiritual trip, then it's a spiritual pilgrimage that you're going on when you're visiting these spiritual sites. And we're looking now at the Temple of Heru, but there are many temples. There's the Temple of Abu Simbel, the Temple of Luxor, the Karnak Temple. These are spiritual sites. And today they're not held in that regard. Today they're not really defined. They're just nice buildings. And this was the ancient Egyptian civilization. And look at the architecture that they did. But in ancient times, our spiritual ancestors came to these sites on spiritual pilgrimages. Way before pilgrimages to Mecca, way before pilgrimages to the Vatican, way before pilgrimages to these sites that are common today. In ancient times, people were coming here to these sites. And when you're coming here, you're not coming from in ancient times, recall there was no such thing as Western religion. And so you didn't have within yourself conflicting thoughts and feelings about visiting these sites or becoming an initiate of the teaching. But since the advent of Western religion, which is a faith-based system, and if you grew up in a faith-based system, but then you find yourself drawn to a mystical system, the ancient Egyptian Shatat Natur mystery system, the conflicts can arise in your personality of how to approach the teaching. You're moving from faith to a process of faith to a process of realization. In the process of faith means you don't have to do much. You do a little worship here and there. You go to church on Sunday, you go to the mosque or go to the synagogue or whatever. But in a mystical system, when you enter a mystical system, the whole idea is to come out something more than what you were when you walked in. You're supposed to go through a transformation. Something is supposed to happen. And a realization is to occur. And in ancient times, these temples were putting out enlightened beings. Like today, how universities put out PhDs. People were coming out of these, going into these temples and coming out of them enlightened beings. And so you had enlightened personalities all over the place. And so when you come here today in modern times, you should approach it from the perspective of a spiritual pilgrimage, much, much deeper and much more profound even than an ethnic pilgrimage. You're coming here because this is where the God lives, the God of the town, the God of the district. And here in the city of Edfu, Heru Behudet is the divinity of the town. So you're coming here to visit the site of the divinity. And in ancient times, there will be great mystery associated with it because you will have doors here and you could not enter if you were not an initiate, except as was spoken about last week. You were allowed to go in to witness the theater, the ritual play, the procession of the bow, the festivities of the devotion to the divine in the form of Heru Behudet. But you are not allowed to go into the covered portion that was for the ones who were taking on the path of the initiatory narrative of the temple. So these are great and profound sites that were placed here by our spiritual ancestors, and what they did here in ancient times was very fantastic and profound and actually very great. So if you take it as, oh, the architecture or the high technology of how they did this, how they did that, all of that is interesting to think about and to muse over. But the purpose of these buildings are and with those interests, it's fine to think about those things. But what is the true purpose of all of this? The true purpose is spiritual illumination. So if you're coming here as an architect or a machinist, or you're missing the point. Or a linguist, you're missing the point. Or an art enthusiast, you're missing the point. Or simply as a tourist, you're missing the point. The point is that this is a site of the divine. And it can have a similar kind of generate a similar kind of profound feeling within you if you approach it from that perspective. But if you're conflicted, if you have your faith-based philosophy well seated in your personality. When you come here, it's just another trip. It's just another awe-inspiring look at how big the pylons are, etc. But if you come here from the perspective of worship and honor and humility, surrender, and profound feeling for the divine, it takes on a completely different experience that you'll be having. But the conflicted feelings have to be removed. And that's what this symbol is referring to in the context of modern human life. Living today with different types of religious philosophies, etc., that are not a mystical process. But in ancient times, you had other conflicts, and some of the conflicts you had in ancient times, you still have in modern times. Like, yeah, a conflict is that you are a human being, and that's all there is to it. That's a conflict. That's cognitive dissonance, and that's why you enter into the temple to discover something other than what your own conceptual mind has constructed for you. You come to remove those inner conflicts and those inner cognitive misapprehensions and those aspects of ignorance. And then on top of that, you have to think about things such as racism, sexism, environmental pressure, as far as climate change, etc., and where you stand in relation to those negative philosophies. And they're not only negative, they're very damaging philosophies. Damaging to human nature, damaging to human culture, and damaging to the human being who believes in those things, and damaging to the people who are victims of those profoundly ignorant philosophies. And entering into the temple allows you to enter into the process of the removal of those ignorances so that you can discover something more profound, more powerful of yourself, which is not your ego self that I'm talking about. So the pylons are also the Aket symbol, the horizon, the two mountains with the sun coming in between. And they represent duality. And the goddesses are Set and Neben. And then when you walk in, you are entering into, when you walk in as the new initiate, as you walk in, what you're doing is that you're entering into the pathway to discover non-duality. But first, you have to clear away some impediments. You have to purify yourself to enter the temple. And once you purify yourself sufficiently to enter into the temple, and how you purify yourself sufficiently to enter into the temple is by Ma'at philosophy, Ma'at precepts, Ma'at teachings, Ma'at ideals, and living according to the societal construct of Ma'at. Okay, not polluting rivers and etc., not stealing from the coffers, not taxing people to the degree they can. They can't afford food to eat, etc. So you have to become aligned with Ma'at, and then you enter into the temple, and then the magic happens. And today we're going to show you a little bit about where that magic happens. So let's turn around. So we were outside. Remember the open court with the porch on the periphery, with the columns upholding the roof of the porch. And then you had a wide open space. And recall the name for that area is called the Peristyle Court. And recall the large door. So when you walk into the door, you come into this hall. And this is called the Hypostyle Hall, meaning the hall of many columns. A hypostyle hall is a hall that have many columns. So firstly, some features and not original to the temple. These light fixtures are not original to the temple. They have been added because they do light shows with the temple now, the temples now. It's how they light up the columns all around. So these are modern additions. And I think in these boxes are the electrical circuitry for the lights. And the black soot on the roof is not native to the temple. The blackened capitals of the columns are not native to the temple. In fact, in the Temple of Dendera, they started cleaning off some of the black soot. And much of that soot has been created by people that used to live in the temples. Because what happened is that these places were abandoned when the temples were shut down by the Roman emperors who converted to Christianity, to Catholicism. So the priests and priestesses were kicked out, and the temples were abandoned. And then the temples actually became overran with sand. So there was lots of sand. The temples were were literally buried in sand. There was no one there cleaning them on a regular basis and so forth. And people, nomadic people came and lived in the temples and started burning fires in the temples to keep warm at night, and to perhaps cook food, meat food, and stuff like that. And the smoke went up onto, and the grime from the smoke got on the capitals. And the columns are in the original color of stone, and that also is when the temple was first created, all of these columns were painted, freshly painted, but all of the paint has been removed by wear and tear, by weathering, um, by people touching, by environmental factors, etc. So those are the things that are not native to the temple in these boxes, like fire extinguishers, things like that. And there would be a door, and there would be a door here. And this is what is referred to as the first hypostyle hall. We skipped one. This is the first hypostyle hall. Meaning, you see back here, so in ancient times, you would not be able to look through, and you would have to walk up. So a door would be here. You will not be able to look through. And when you graduate from this hypostyle hall, you enter into this area of the temple. And to enter into this area of the temple, you step up. And then to enter into the deeper level of the temple, you have to walk up a ramp to go to a higher level. And then back here is the Holy of Holies. So you have to walk up to go up a higher level than that. And the image of the deity, the statue, would be inside the shrine. And each of these areas will have doors. So you can't, in ancient times, couldn't see straight through as you do today. And meaning that the divinity is the center from which creation emerges from, and creation projects outward. So as was shown to us in the Temple of Asar, the hypostyle hall, the proper hypostyle hall numerical configuration is that this will be the first hypostyle hall, because this will be the first aspect of creation that is generated from the center. And the columns have certain special symbolism. The columns are round, and they're wider at the bottom. And then they flute out into flowers. In these Ptolemaic temples, all of the capitals are different flowers. You can see this one is different than this one, it's different than this one. But on the column, you have a special formula of was and was ne. So the flow of life, all the powerful flow of life, all. And above that, you see the symbol of Heru Behudet in his hawk form with his lion body. And these signatures, these symbols, are part of the mystery of the Hypostyle Hall that you're in now. So I said we skip one, but it's actually works out that we started here. And you can see as you enter, you go from this hypostyle hall, and now you're moving in more inward towards the temple, and you have another Heru Behudet symbol over the opening. So you're constantly being reminded of the all-encompassing spiritual essence, and you're being reminded of what is to be attained by you as you enter into these succeeding levels of the temple. And typically what you see are depictions on the walls all the way around this rectangular form hall. And that is the mystery that the hieroglyphs will be read to you, explained to you. And you might even, if you're fortunate, you'll hear the priest and the priestesses chanting the inscriptions on the walls, filling the hall with the sounds of the scripture. And you would be taken by a higher ranking priest or priestess, and you would learn in a particular special order what the theme of the hall is all about, the principles and the philosophy, the teaching, the mechanism, the metaphysics. And the theurgy. You'll start getting insight, foundational insight into the theurgy. And your theurgical practice will become more and more refined the deeper you go into the temple. And this hypostyle hall is created in a manner that follows the Assyrian resurrection, when Heru was being protected by hiding in a papyrus swamp. And that's what you're doing. You're Heru, and you're hiding your higher spiritual aspiration from the ego in the swamp of the spiritual philosophy. You see here again Heru Behudet with the head of a hawk and the body of a lion. And you can see on these columns, the was Ankh was Neb goes around the columns. And then you have the grassy field painted. All of this will be painted And then on the peripheral wall of the hall, you have papyrus plants. And it's letting you know you're in a papyrus swamp as Heru, hiding from the ego, hiding from Set. That is, the Set is not to be considered as a devil or Satan or anything like that. Set is the proclivities of egoism. The principle of unrighteousness within your own mind, your own psyche, your own personality, that you have to purify through the initiatory process. And so you also see Heru Behudet circling the column in his lion form, a hawk with lion. So vital, and you can see the lion is sitting on his rump, and the hawk head with the crown, the hawk head. That means the lower animal power has been sublimated, and the hawk insight into spirit consciousness is predominant. And that is to occur within you. And on the periphery, you have auxiliary doors. We will talk more about those later. So let's move on to the next one. So only doing these time really goes fast. It's comparing two pictures, so you know. Here's a nice view of the you see here clearly. There's a nice view. See was was, and then goes all the way around. And Heru goes all the way around. Okay. Okay, so let's go now to so now we're in the Hypostyle Hall 2. So, and we're on the left side. We're not in the center of the room. So if you would walk this way, you make a left, you go into the Hypostyle Hall from which we just came. So we're moving into creation. And when you go in the opposite direction, you're moving to the essence from which creation has come from. And we're on the left side of the hall. And you can see, again, it's a hypostyle hall. It's a hall of many columns. And here's the doorway that you first walk in when you were outside. Then you walk into this hall. You stay here for how many years it takes to study and learn and become proficient and advanced. And then you enter into the hypostyle hall from which we just came. So you move inwards that way. If we're looking at it, and that's the movement that's the initiatory movement from the outside going in. If we're looking at the temple from the perspective of the creation, then you'll be moving from inwards, moving out. So here is the second hypostyle hall, and you can see again, you have the ritual performances on the wall with hieroglyphic text. And you have here you can see the remnants of the paint. So the was painted white. And here you have the goddesses, Watchit and Nekabet, sitting on the net on papyrus plants. And all of that has mystical symbolism. What's in here is not just art. These are mystical symbols that hold profound spiritual implications. Here is Heru with his human body and the head of a hawk. And he's being given an offering by the Pradhan. And here you can see the Pradhan is the ancient Egyptian term for what is commonly referred to as the pharaoh or the king. And Pradhan means great house, and a Pradhan could be male or female. Here you have, if we pull out, you see from the bottom to the top of the ritual performances and the offerings that are being given. And so one of the features of this hypostyle hall are the goddesses, Watchit and Nekabet. And here again, you see the Pradhan worshiping Heru. You're worshiping a deity. Here is Heru. And this perspective of this photograph of looking up, this is what happens when you actually visit the temple. You are looking up towards the ceiling. You're looking up. In other words, wherever you place your gaze, you're faced with a divinity or a scene of offering or a scene of interaction with the divinity. There's at no point in the temple that you can stand where you are not faced with the divinity, and the prada in interaction with the divinity, meaning the real personality in some way. And it's designed that way on purpose. There are no blank walls. It's designed that way on purpose. If you go into a modern building, you might have a blank wall and there's a picture on the wall. But you come here and there are no pictures on the wall. There are engravings and carvings of the ritual performances and the scenes. And it's the walls are covered in these ritual performances and scenes. And it's designed that way. You're being inundated when you walk into the temple. You're being inundated with this imagery. It's drowning you. You're being engulfed and overwhelmed by it. And that's done on purpose because you're coming in with your ignorant mind, and that mind needs to be inundated. It needs to be flooded with spiritual imagery. And the more it's explained to you, and the more you understand it, the deeper the effect is in your unconscious, and the deeper the effect is in your personality. You can see all the way around here, you have Heru again. You have Heru. You have Heru. This is the Temple of Heru. So you're going to see Heru the most, and you can see all of the performances towards Heru. Now, if you look back here, you're going to see this is you can see the library. You know, this column is in front of it. But you can see there's a better picture. And you can see how the columns are made. There's a stand, and the columns are not made out of single blocks of stone. There are drums stacked on each other. So they look something like this. Like this. And you have them stacked on each other. This is a hand drum. And so a circlet, it will go up and up and up and up to make the columns. You keep just stacking them on each other. And again, the capitals are not the same. They're different. And this is a feature of the Ptolemaic period, where the capitals are multifaceted. And it has its purpose because it allows the mind to, it keeps the mind active. So you're looking at that one, you're looking at that one, that's a positive. The negative is that when you come in here, your mind has to start to be trained to become monotonous. So if everything is the same, then it's training your mind to be concentrated, to become monotonous, to become concentrated. So there has to be a certain level of monotony built into the mind to concentrate well. And sometimes you may walk in here and you have people talking loud. People may be smoking cigarettes, wearing strong perfumes. And in ancient times, none of that would be allowed in the temple. This is a sacred space, a sacred place. It will be kept clean. And the predominant scent in the temple is the burning of incense. It will not be cigarettes or perfume or anything like that. Here's a good example of the drum-like feature of the columns. You see the separation here. So this is one drum. Here's another, and they keep stacking and stacking until they get to the desired height. And then they carve the inscriptions on it. So we'll stop here for this evening, and then we'll come back and we'll go deeper into the temple. Actually, let's the last couple minutes we have, let's do one more, a glance at one more. That was the left side. As you come in, you look left. That's where you would see. That's where you walk in. Now, if you go to the opposite side, this is what you'll encounter. You'll come to this side. This is the right side. So you are all the way across the hall, and now you're on this side of the hall. And here, this is what I was explaining that you've seen before. Here's the library where the papyrus paper inscription text would be held. And here is the same symbol, which is a strong feature of this temple. And again, on the wall, you have inscriptions and you have imagery. You have philosophy of the temple. You see all the way around. Here's Heru again. Here's Heru again. And again, you know, an example of how they pile the stones one on top of the other to make the column. And actually, here's Amsumin being worshipped, offering being given. And Amsumin is a form of Heru, so it makes sense that he would be in the temple. And you can see the capitals again, different. This is opposite side. And if you go around here and make a right, we'll go into the first hypostyle hall that we're looking at, that we came from. So these hypostyle halls are the halls that certain spiritual teachings were given before you can graduate and make it deeper into the temple. So the hypostyle halls are special places because this one is the first level that the initiates come into once they have been proven to be allowed in from the open court. They've done a certain level of preliminary purification of themselves, and then they're allowed in here. And think about how it would be with all of this painted. And there's no trash. These boxes are not around here. You hearing or you're smelling the incense, the wafer of the incense as you walk in. and the profound cleanliness of the place. And you're seeing the higher level priests, clergy members, priests and priestesses around, and they're taking you know, your awestruck, your it's literally blowing your mind, which is designed to do. You see the height of the columns, and that would be the process. You would come in here, and then you would stay at this level. So you come in, you do your lessons, and then you would leave. You leave out that way to the left. And then you come in and you do that for how many years it takes before you can advance. That's going through here, making a right, and going to the first hypostyle hall of itself. So it takes spiritual advancement, takes time, takes years of practice, preparation, and training. And so the hypostyle hall is once you advance from this hypostyle hall to the second hypostyle hall, you're making serious progress in your understanding of the teaching, the philosophy, the mysticism. Your spiritual practice is becoming more seated, your meditations, etc. And then think about being allowed into these two places, these two hypostyle halls, for 5, 10, 15 years. And then advancing after that into a deeper part of the temple. And allow those feelings now in modern times to bubble up inside of you. And be cognizant of those feelings and allow them rest in those feelings. Hetep means to rest. So be in hetep with those feelings, rest in those feelings and those energies. Okay, so that'll be it for today. We'll do our closing prayer. Dua Sama Sehu. Dua Sama Sehu. Dua Sama Sehu. Dua Sama Sehu. Om Mati Mati Heru Behudet. Hetep. Dua everyone until we meet again. Hetep.
That's it.
Right.